30 seconds. Linda, when you see the graphic disappear, you can start. Linda, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Good evening. My name is Linda Whitmore, and I am a member of the West Contra Costa County League of Women Voters. And I'm also the chair for tonight's forum. I want to welcome the audience. And also, I'm so excited we have all of our candidates here with us tonight. I'm so excited to hear what they have to say. Tonight, the forum is on a webinar format, which means that the audience cannot be seen and that they are muted. Tonight, we will not be using the chat, our question or answer format. All of the questions that will be given to the candidates have been supplied by the League of Women Voters. We have 3 sponsors for tonight's forum: the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Inc., Epsilon Phi Zeta Chapter, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, and the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa County. So now I'd like to turn this over to our moderator, Jeffrey Wright.
Good evening to our viewers. It is my distinct pleasure and privilege and honor to serve as your moderator of this evening. As a native son of Richmond, California, whose family came here during the 40s, World War II, to take advantage of the wartime activities and interest and work opportunity, I have a long history in this city, as does my family. So just as you're concerned about what's going on in Richmond, so am I, and I'm eager to hear what our candidates have to say as it pertains to the challenges and opportunities that Richmond has. I want to explain to our candidates how we will be operating tonight, our rules of engagement, if you will. Each candidate will have an opportunity to come forward with a 3-minute statement of introduction. After the statements of introductions have been concluded, we will enter into a question and answer portion of our program. The candidates will have 1 minute to respond to the questions that are brought forth. When we conclude the question and answer portion of our program, we're going to engage in a roundtable debate and rebuttal format. This will give each candidate an opportunity to question the other candidate, respond to questions, to just engage. So this ought to be a very spirited part of our program. Now, again, we want to maintain decorum and order throughout this process. Our viewers are interested in issues, the challenges, the opportunities that Richmond has to offer. So I'm going to ask that each of our candidates maintain a professional posture. Again, this is about issues. This is not about personalities. So we don't want to engage in any unnecessary attacks as it pertains to the individuals or any groups. Again, we want to stay focused on the issues. I'm also going to ask that we refrain from the use of any colorful language. We want to maintain a very orderly and professional event tonight. So refrain from that colorful language, and to be more specific, please, no cursing or swearing or inappropriate language. So with that, I'm going to move to the opening statements for our candidates. We have our candidates in alphabetical order for the opening statement portion of our program. So I'm going to start with Mayoral candidate Nat Bates for his opening statement. 3 minutes are on the clock for you, Mr. Bates.
Thank you kindly for this opportunity to speak before a large segment and supporters of the League of Women Voters and the various sororities, and also the NAACP. Jeff, I was very interested and moved by your comment about you being one of the individuals that moved to Richmond for the purpose of opportunities and improving your life and family lifestyle. That's exactly what happened to me. When I was 11 years of age, I moved from Texas with my mother to pursue a better life. And Richmond is the only home that I know. And I am thrilled and delighted. And I love this city. And some people ask me, say, well, Nat, at your age, why are you interested in running for the mayor's position when you could, in fact, relax and travel around the world and live the rest of your life in somewhat pleasure? The very fact that I love this city, and I have so many friends in this city that I grew up with, and I've seen this city become prosperous over the years, and now I see this city becoming an embarrassment. An embarrassment because we are not collectively taking care of the residents in this city. No matter where you go throughout the United States, public safety is the #1 concern of all citizens, and especially law-abiding citizens. I have 35 plus years in the probation field, working in the criminal justice system. I know what it takes to get a city moving and being positive, and also bringing in developments and making sure that we have the revenue to provide the services that all of us really want. And this majority, RPA, have done a disservice to the city of Richmond by defunding the police department from 197 down to 97 staff. We are exposed to nothing but criminal activities. And as a result, we need someone that will bring back the police department to its fullest extent possible, to eradicate the crime and to be responsive to the citizens of this community. No city can survive with lawlessness behavior, theft of automobiles, theft of the Cadillac converters, criminal activities all over the city. Richmond has 54 square miles of territory. We come from Albany all the way to Pinole, Hercules, and Port Rodeo. This police department is decimated.
We're on time, Mr. Bates.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you would give us a little warning. Everybody else, I think that would be appreciated. Thank you very much, Mr. Wright.
Okay, you're welcome. Mr. Dunning, your 3-minute statement.
Thank you, Jeff.
Talk on the screen for Mr. Dunning.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for the sponsors. As Nat alluded to, Richmond is headed in the wrong direction, and we need new leadership to get back on track. The ways of the past are just not working for us. So it's time for new leaders who listen and represent all residents and work toward common sense solutions to the many challenges we face. My vision for Richmond is the same as your vision for Richmond: safe, clean, and fair for all. Number one, safety. We need to revitalize our community-involved policing model that was headed in the right direction before it was cut short. We need more police and the right kind of police. By committing to a sufficient level of staffing, even if it takes a while to hire everyone, we can restore confidence in our once nationally recognized police department. We also need to continue investing in non-law enforcement strategies for public safety. And once and for all, we need to get serious about addressing the homelessness epidemic. And if the county can't provide the regional leadership, perhaps we'll step up and show the way. Number two, we need to clean up. It'll take a combination of city resources, community service, as well as common sense solutions, like more trash cans near schools and bus stops, vouchers for the dump, education, and more investigation and enforcement around illegal dumping. Number three, we need to treat our business community more fairly by readjusting the business license fees, which we can do under the ordinance. And by doing so, we can attract and support healthy business growth, including getting serious about revitalizing our downtown. We have a lot of work to do, so let's get started. With me as your mayor, our success will be shared. Our true progress in Richmond will be shared, and the credit will be shared. You will not hear me say that I did it, but you will hear we did it. That's not just nice words, it's practical. My career of over 20 years in conflict resolution and collaborative problem solving all over the world has shown me time and time and time again that the best leaders are not the ones with all the answers from the get-go, but rather the ones who can help us co-create breakthrough solutions by leveraging all voices. In other words, with all this talk about where people stand, you just got to ask, what does that say about where we're going? When you're standing still, it's hard to make progress. We need to evolve. We need to stop standing in our positions and digging in. We need to step forward, walk together, move together, and succeed together. I know we can and we will. Thank you.
Mr. Martinez, your 3-minute opening statement. You're muted.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So my name is Eduardo Martinez. I'm a 2-time Richmond council member, the current vice mayor of Richmond, and a retired public elementary school teacher. I've lived in Richmond with my wife, Liz, for 30 years, where we raised our son, Cosmo. Let me share why I'm running for mayor. When I was a public school teacher, I noticed that many of my students couldn't participate in physical education. That was because my students had grown up in the shadow of Chevron. And because of that, they had much higher rates of asthma than students in other districts. I worked with students and their parents to start a special education class for kids who had difficulty breathing. We called ourselves the Asthma Club. When that didn't seem enough, I sought public office. Since then, I've established a long and consistent record showing my commitment to progressive values since 2014. Since I've been elected, I've supported increasing Richmond's minimum wage to $15 an hour, championed Measure U, which decreases taxes for 60% of businesses and increases revenue for the city from big corporations. I've supported affordable housing for all residents by helping make Richmond the first California city in 30 years to pass rent control. I've approved multiple developments, including Miraflores, the new hacienda on Barrett, and Harbor Way Senior Housing. And I've stood against developers taking financial advantage of the city at Point Melati. I've invested in multiple violence prevention programs, including ONS, which reduces gun violence, ban the box legislation, which discourages reoffending by helping formerly incarcerated people get gainful employment and job training. I've supported our undocumented residents by helping make Richmond a sanctuary city and creating city IDs so undocumented residents can use city services. I led the ban on transporting coal and pet coke, which was impacting community health. That's why I'm endorsed by the Democratic Party of Contra Costa County, the Sierra Club, the Richmond's Firefighters Union, 2 unions that represent our city staff, Local 1021 and Local 21, and such electeds as County Supervisor John Joya and Richmond Council Member Claudia Jimenez. This evening, I encourage you to pay attention to which candidates actually have real plans for your concerns and hopes for Richmond and who really knows our city. By this time next year, with your help and support, we can have Richmond's first elected Latino mayor and a progressive mayor with a record you can trust. I hope I can count on your vote in November. Thank you.
Mr. Wassberg, your 3-minute opening statement.
You hear me now?
Yes.
I lived in San Pablo and Richmond for the last 60 years. I've seen the changes. Ever since the RPA took over the city government, homicides has rate went 3-folds. Supported illegal immigrants. They have no right being in my country. Giving these people fraudulent ID cards, breaking the law, all federal laws. We know for a fact that the RPA told the police chief not to enforce the law. This is why you have these 2 homeless campmen should not be parked there because they're parked there illegally. They've been like that for almost 2 years now. Matter of fact, I supported the African-American community during the heyday of the violence. I was at the Black Crime Summit, the state of emergency, tent cities, Operation Richmond. I helped pack 10,000 Bibles. I never see these candidates down there doing this. We know for a fact that the state implemented the $15 an hour, not Eduardo Martinez. Now, because well, we all know what's going on with the city council. We all know what they're doing. I said they even admitted that they're an anarchist, Bernie Sanders, democratic social government who don't believe in no law. I don't see how in the world they could just sit there and say, well, we did this and we did that for the community when Richmond looks like a garbage dump. You got criminals roaming around the city and the police are leaving. Even the police criticized the city council. Even the fire department criticized you. Every day, every time you hear the city council meetings, they're always complaining about the RPA defunding the police. It was the RPA that the reason why the police are leaving. We all know that. Look at the video. You cannot have people in our government that is not going to support our constitutional laws. And not one member of the RPA even admitted to support our constitutional laws. Because when you go in that city meeting, the city council, if they don't like what you say, they're going to cut you down in a heartbeat, just like Gil McLaughlin did. And this is what the RPA, if you put these people in office, we're going to be in big trouble, people. This is no joke. The police are leaving because of the city council, because of Eduardo and his anarchist group. They even admitted that the reason why they're leaving because of the RPA. They even admitted that they're not going to force the law. It was Ben, the Sergeant Ben said, he even admitted that I'm not going to go in harm's way because we're not getting support by the city council. The number one task of a city government is to support the Constitution. This is what our country was founded on. And we know for a fact that the RPA members, all of them, not one time even respected our constitutional laws. So how can you have a government that's going to favor the criminals instead of the law-abiding citizens?
All right, you're at time. Thank you, Mr. Wassberg. So I want to thank each of you candidates for your opening statements. We're now going to move to the prepared question stage of our program. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer the same question. There are several questions. They're in alternating order with regard to when you will be able to answer. So some questions you might be the second or third person to answer. Next one, you might be the first person to answer. So everybody will have an opportunity to be first on at least one question. So again, I'm going to remind you, throughout the course of our event, this forum, try to maintain professional decorum. Let's try to leave individuals and personalities and groups out of it and stay focused on the issue at hand. The first question that's coming forth will be for Shawn Dunning, followed by other candidates who I will call upon at the proper time. Mr. Dunning, what experience qualifies you to serve as mayor, and what differentiates you from the other candidates? Mr. Dunning, your 1 minute reply.
Thank you for the question, Jeff. My experience is different than virtually any of the candidates here, and it's absolutely qualifying me for this. And as I've said before, in another time and place, I would not be relevant for candidate for mayor. And frankly, I wouldn't want to be. But my expertise is in conflict resolution and collaborative problem solving. I'm at my best, professionally and personally, when I'm working with people who disagree with each other. And my approach is not to take sides and see who has the most numbers on which side to push their idea through. My approach is genuine consensus building. A lot of people don't understand that because they haven't experienced it. They say things like kumbaya, or that just sounds nice, but that's not the way it works. For the last 20 years, that's exactly what I've been doing. I've managed to get Israelis and Palestinians working together, not making peace writ large, but building relationships between the most unlikely friendships. I've worked with leaders of various municipalities, along with Congressman John Lewis, to have conversations on race that nobody thought was possible. I know how to do this, and I'll do it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunning. The next respondent will be Mr. Martinez, and I'll ask the question again, Mr. Martinez. What experience qualifies you to serve as the mayor, and what differentiates you from the other candidates? You have 1 minute to respond.
That there's too much to answer in 1 minute, so I'll focus on my accomplishments. My greatest accomplishment is fighting for the people of Richmond. Before joining Richmond City Council, I was an elementary school teacher for over 20 years and working with my students and their families. That was the, I'm proud of my track record as Richmond City Council member. From my voting record, Richmond residents can see from my commitment to working with the community for environmental justice, economic development, and public safety. I'm particularly proud of my work on Richmond's coal and pet coke ban. Before this ordinance, Richmond families were exposed to high levels of toxic dust in the air as coal was transported to the Leavenworth terminal to be shipped to China and Japan. We're a city that already suffers from elevated levels of asthma and heart disease caused by bad air quality, particularly because of our proximity to the Chevron refinery. So I'm proud that my work has helped achieve cleaner air for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Wassberg, I am going to ask the question again, and you shall respond. What experience qualifies you to serve as the mayor of Richmond? What differentiates you from the other candidates? You have 1 minute to respond, Mr. Wassberg.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yes.
I know for a fact what the city council has done and they plan on doing. As mayor, I have the executive power to sign an executive order implementing a law if the city council and if the police chief refuses to enforce the law. The other candidates have not even talked about executive order. It's legal, and I will implement these type of laws because you know for a fact that the city council is not respecting our laws. They want to implement their own type of government. See, this is what I'm trying to tell you people. If you don't believe me, check it out yourself. This is what's going to make me different from all the other candidates because I'll get things done. I don't need the city council. I didn't need to, you're not going to sit there and sing Kumbaya with the RPA because they already made up their minds what they're going to do. Because I have the power to if I have to, is not take the law in my own hands to implement a law as long as it's under the Constitution and according to the law and doing what's right for the people. See, this is what, you have the mayor, you have the governor.
You're at time, Mr. Wassberg.
Thank you.
You're at time. Thank you for your response. Mr. Bates, the same question for you, and I will read the question again. What experience qualifies you to serve as the mayor, and what differentiates you from the other candidates? You have 1 minute to respond, and the timer should be on your screen.
Experience, knowledge of the job, having been there twice as the mayor, having worked with numerous city councilmen over the past 4 decades. Being a mayor is just not chairing a meeting. It requires the ability to work with your council members. It requires the ability to work with staff. It also requires the ability to be able to go beyond just locally for funding, especially having knowledge of Washington, D.C. and how it operates, being entrusted with various congressmen, the White House, the governor's office, because a number of funds come directly from those sources. No one knows how to maneuver and approach these different groups to get funding for Richmond. No one has ever been to Washington, D.C., as I have, to bring funding to this city. Leadership, the ability to get things done, be able to communicate with all factions of the city, irrespective of whether you agree with them or not. And those are the qualities that I bring to the table that no one running for mayor can claim.
Okay, you're at time, Mr. Bates. Thank you for your response. I'll move to question number 2, and the first respondent for question number 2 will be Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, I'm going to read the question. What is your priority for bringing new business to Richmond, and how will you encourage them to come to Richmond, given concerns about taxes such as Measure U? And for those in our listening audience who aren't familiar with Measure U, it's a gross receipts tax, and it has caused the fees to go up considerably for certain businesses. So again, the question is, what is your priority for bringing new businesses to Richmond? How will you encourage them to come to Richmond, given taxes? And what is your position on Measure U, the gross receipts tax that was recently enacted? Mr. Martinez, you have 1 minute to respond. You're on mute.
There were several questions, and I'll respond to the one featuring Measure U. Measure U is a progressive tax measured designed to make big corporations in Richmond pay their fair share to our city. Big businesses in Richmond have been trying to convince the public that it's too much, as corporations always do. They've thrown out numbers that sound scary. One business's taxes went up 500%, or another's went up 7,000%. But let's look at what that means. At the absolute most, businesses are now being asked to contribute less than 1.4% of the revenue to the city. Santa Fe Pacific Pipeline, owned by multinational corporation Kinder Morgan, paid Richmond $889 in business taxes in 2021 before we passed Measure U. And there are many more examples like this. So when you hear that a business's taxes went up by some large percent, I suggest you ask for the raw numbers, because what that means is they've been underpaying our city for years.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Martinez. The next respondent will be Mr. Wassberg. Mr. Wassberg, I will read the question again. What is your priority for bringing new business to Richmond, and how will you encourage them to come, given high taxes and other things? What is your position on Measure U? Mr. Wassberg, you have 1 minute. The timer should be on your screen. You need to unmute, Mr. Wassberg.
Yeah, you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, we know for a fact that the Richmond City Chambers criticized the RPA for Measure U. Now, I will try everything I can to modify Measure U so big business could come in and start hiring people. Big business pays big money. Small business pays small money. Good basic common sense. And the city needs the revenue, because that's how our government depends on it. Now, the big business, they're already paying taxes. They're already paying into the system. They pay your retirement, your Social Security, your disability, unemployment. See, this is why you want to keep the tax rate low on the companies, so you have companies come in. If you have Measure U the way it is right now, you're not going to have big business coming in, because they're going to be moving out. And the purpose of Measure U was to sponsor the city bank that's going to make Richmond a welfare city. The question was asked by Nat Bates, where are you going to get the money? They said, from you, from the taxpayers. See, this is why they want to tax the rich and give to the poor. They want to support these homeless captains.
You're at time, Mr. Wassberg. Thank you for your response. The next respondent to the question will be Mr. Bates. And again, I will read the question. What is your priority for bringing new business to Richmond, and how will you encourage them to come, given high taxes they'll need to pay due to Measure U? What is your position on Measure U? Mr. Bates, you have 1 minute. The timer should be on your screen.
Well, Measure U was put on by the RPA and SEIU Local 1021. Granted, it did pass significantly, but I don't think the majority of the voters really understood the implication as it related to small businesses and medium-sized businesses. We need to revisit that. For an example, I had an opportunity to talk with Lamar, who is a manager at Costa. Their business tax went from about $25,000 to over $250,000. They were considering moving, not moving, but getting another store at the hilltop where Prologic is going to be locating. Now they're second guessing that. We need to be fair and equitable to all of our businesses, not just big business, but little business. They're also being affected. And I'll tell you, the only way you can bring business in this city is be more cooperative and sensitive to all of the businesses. The word travels very fast. Same thing with the auto industry. They're considering leaving Richmond. That's a
Your
huge
time, Mr. Bates.
loss.
Thank you for your response. Mr. Dunning, the same question for you, and I'll read the question. What is your priority for bringing new businesses to Richmond, and how will you encourage them to come, given the high taxes they'll need to pay due to Measure U? What is your position on Measure U? Mr. Dunning, you have 1 minute to respond. Timer should be on your screen.
No business in their right mind is going to look at Richmond as a place to develop with the policies that we have in place. It's a simple question of fairness. And it's not just big businesses who are questioning it. When I've shared some of the facts on the ground, and right here is a letter from an attorney threatening to file a lawsuit, federal lawsuit against our city for being fundamentally unfair in many different ways. Do you think it's fair to raise taxes from $14,000 to $1.2 million when we were already getting $3 million in sales tax from those dealerships? This is just one example of many, but the fundamental question of fairness should make us wonder, well, how was the policy created? Is it fair to unilaterally impose on someone else what you think is fair? I can tell you from my career, fairness comes up a lot. And the one and only way to settle fairness is for all parties involved to come to an agreement. That never happened. It can happen, and I'll make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunning. We're now going to move to question number 3. And the first respondent on question number 3 will be Mr. Wassberg. Mr. Wassberg, I'm going to read the question. What is your position on defunding the police and why? What will you do to ensure that neighborhoods are safe in Richmond? You have 1 minute to respond. The timer should be on your screen, so watch the timer. Mr. Wassberg, unmute yourself. Mr. Wassberg.
You hear me now?
I can hear you. You've got 1 minute to respond. Watch the timer on your screen.
First thing I would do, I would sign an executive order, give the $6 million back to the Richmond PD. That's the first thing I would do, because we know for a fact that the city council defunded the police ever since after the Floyd incident. Our government, the Richmond City Council, vilified the police. I don't need the city council's approval. I will sign that executive order, and I will guarantee that the police will be full staff. We know for a fact that Nat Bates and Eduardo and the mayor stood together and gave $6 million to the ONS that did nothing here in Richmond. And I have the power to sign that executive order because we know for a fact that the city council does not like the police. They hate the police. They want to get rid of the police, because I have every legal right to bring the money back to the police to make Richmond safe. And I will put a police substation right on the corner of 4th and McDonald, the most deadliest place in the city of Richmond. And I would try to do everything I can to ensure the safety of our citizens, because that's your constitutional legal right.
You're at time, Mr. Wassberg. Thank you for your response. The next respondent to the question will be Mr. Bates. And again, I will read the question. What is your position on defunding the police and why? What will you do to ensure our neighborhoods are safe? Mr. Bates, you have 1 minute to respond. Timer should be on your screen. Mr. Bates. You need to unmute.
The first thing I would do is sit down with the chief, command staff, and determine what is the appropriate needs currently that we can sufficiently protect the city. Last time I spoke to the chief, it was 165 staffing. Well, where are you going to get the staff from? Well, we talked a little bit about trying to hire retired county employees who are who are not in the public employees retirement system. The fact still remains is that this city is not safe. We have an obligation and responsibility to make every citizen in this city feel safe. They don't want to come out at night. They don't want to go to certain public places. It's our job to provide the adequate and necessary staffing that covers this entire city. And I indicated 54 square miles cannot be done with something like 97 officers, which Obviously, over 50, 60% of them are in the management section. We
You're at
need
time, Mr.
patrolmen
Bates.
on the street today. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. The next respondent to the question will be Mr. Dunning. Mr. Dunning, I'll read the question once again. What is your position on defunding the police and why? What will you do to ensure our neighborhoods are safe? You have 1 minute to respond. The timer should be on your screen as well. Mr. Dunning.
There are police departments across our country that probably ought to be disbanded and built from scratch. Richmond, California is not one of those. In fact, not too long ago, we were leading the way. We were recognized by the Obama administration as a model to follow. We were reimagining police before the term was coined. Now, with that said, we absolutely prematurely reduced our police force. I'm all for reducing police services if we don't need them, but we need to reduce the need for police before reducing police. So our city council last year got it backwards. I'm all for the alternative programs that address safety and crime prevention, and so are our police. But we need to ultimately work together and come up with sensible policy. Safety is more than just police. It's about community, it's about knowing each other, it's about leveraging an array of services. But we need to be working together and come up with sensible policy. What I will do is everything possible to get all the players at the table and come up with a new minimum staffing requirement. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Dunning. Mr. Martinez, you're the next respondent to that question, and I'll read it again. What is your position on defunding the police and why? What will you do to ensure our neighborhoods are safe? Mr. Martinez, you have 1 minute. The timer should be on your screen.
The best way to improve public safety is by focusing on prevention, not showing up after something bad has happened. Some of the ways that we've done this is through ONS. Also, YouthWorks, a city department that provides job training and job placement for young people, and the development of a mental health crisis response team. Job opportunities and site management for the unhoused, so encampments can be cleaner and safer, and we can help unhoused people transition away from living on the streets. Public safety must also include traffic safety, especially near our schools and homes. Engineered solutions can make it impossible for people to speed along the streets. Wildfire prevention and protection. But first, I want us to be honest. We still have money to hire 7 new policemen. It's not a matter that we've defunded the police, it's that they can't find anyone to hire. So we need to find ways to hire people.
You're at time, Mr. Martinez. Thank you for your response. We're going to move to question number 4, and our first respondent for this question will be Mr. Bates. The question is, give us your thoughts about rent control. Is the current approach working? Why or why not? Mr. Bates, your response.
Rent control was again engineered by the RPA and the SCI 1021. What it did, it pitted the landlords, or what people now call providers, home providers, versus the renter. Most relationships in rent and landlords, whatever you want to call it, is amicable. They work together and they collectively respond to each other. Now we've got a confrontation. We have individuals that have not paid rent to landlords for 2 years or thereabouts. Where are they going to get that refund from? With people that refuse to move. This thing needs to be fair and equitable and respectful of the small homeowners and usually the mom and pops. It's not corporation that owns all these homes. It's the little hardworking mom and pops. It needs to be revisited and modified.
Thank you, Mr. Bates, for your response. The next respondent will be Mr. Dunning. Mr. Dunning, again, I will read the question. Give us your thoughts about rent control. Is the current approach working? Why or why not? Mr. Dunning, your response.
Thank you. the fundamental principle of protecting any of our residents against any unfair treatment is something we should work toward. With regard to rental housing, we need to think about what's fair for the renters. We need to think about what's fair for the landlords. The current approach to rent control is not working because the perception, whether how much of it is actual fact or not, we need to look at it. But the fundamental perception is that if you are a mom and pop landlord, potential landlord, thinking about renting out your home, maybe you want to travel for a while and you want to make your home available for someone who could use it. Right now, the word on the street is don't you dare do it. I've heard this from dozens and dozens of people all over our city, from all levels, all classes. That's the problem. So we need to get together and again, create policy with landlords and tenants working together, not pushing something from an activist mindset from one side against the other. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Our next respondent to that question will be Mr. Martinez, and I will read the question once again. Give us your thoughts about rent control. Is the current approach working? Why or why not? Mr. Martinez, you have 1 minute.
The current approach is working. People become homeless because they can't afford housing. And recent data shows no one living on minimum wage can afford a one-bedroom apartment anywhere in the United States. Rents are too high. Our children can't imagine owning a basic home to start a family in. My approach is development without displacement. Young people should be able to afford to stay in the city they grew up in, and young families should be able to secure stable housing. So under my mayorship, housing projects in Richmond will be centrally located with reasonable access to public transportation, stores, and services. Meet strong affordability criteria, thereby increasing housing stock for a wider swath of Richmond residents. Include significant community benefit components. No cause significant disruption to Richmond environment and biodiversity. Not be built on or near a former toxic waste site without full remediation. No covert significant portions of public green space to private property.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Wassberg, the same question to you. You'll need to unmute and I will read the question again. Give us your thoughts about rent control. Is the current approach working? Why or why not? Mr. Wassberg, you have 1 minute to respond. You need to unmute. Mr. Wassberg, you need to unmute.
Yeah, I favor rent control in some cases, but you need to be careful how you do it. You don't want to destroy the real estate market. Now, the problem is the city council vilified the landlord. All landlords are bad. That's not so. Okay. Actually, it depends what type of income you have that'll make you homeless. You see what I'm saying? But the city council, they want to rent control all across the board. Now, I would like to see HUD advance into a program where you could have some type of organization where one rent will cover the rent and the rest for luxury. Back in the day, you could do that, but now you can't. You see what I'm saying? But you just can't blame the landlords for everything. It's where you live, what type of job you have. I mean, all these has to do about people being homeless. I look at it this way. If you have a job and work, you shouldn't be homeless. You should be able to rent a place. But the problem is it all depends on where you live. But I go back again, you don't want to destroy the real estate market, because if you do, you are going to destroy the city, because nobody's going to come in to invest in real estate. See, this is what I'm trying to tell you,
Mr. Wassberg. Thank you for your response. I'm going to move into the fifth question. And the first respondent to this question will be Mr. Dunning. Here's the question for you, Mr. Dunning. How will you rally the different groups in the community to get beyond the division of politics after the election is over so that we can be unified in moving forward for the benefit of all of Richmond? You have 1 minute to respond. The timer should be on your screen. Mr. Dunning.
Thank you. I appreciate that question. And that's exactly why I'm running for mayor. Because if we're going to solve our problems, we got to get together. I'm trying to do it now with the campaign. Frankly, it's a little tricky. We're all in this competitive mindset. And unfortunately, pitting one candidate against another when at the end of the day, our values are shared mostly. How we want to go about it might be quite different. But that's exactly why we need to get people together. And in my profession, it's not about the starting point of do we do your way or my way? It's you get deeper. You understand about why it is that you want what you want. And I'm pretty darn confident that everyone across Richmond has way more in common than we're giving ourselves credit to. So what I will do is exactly what I'm doing now, but once I'm in the mayor's office, I'll have the convening power that I don't have now. If some people don't want to show up, that's fine. I'll just invite other people who share their perspectives. And together we're going to find breakthrough solutions that do represent the needs on all sides. It's not Pollyanna. We can actually do it, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Mr. Martinez, the same question to you. I will read the question again. How will you rally different groups in the community to get beyond the division of politics after the election is over so we can be a unified and moving forward for the benefit of all in Richmond? Mr. Martinez, you have 1 minute to respond.
I've done that already. I've brought groups together. I've lifted the voices of communities who haven't been heard so that their needs could be met. You see that in the rent stabilization. You see that in the banning of the coal. You see that in making this a sanctuary city. You see it in my being able to work with the city council on various things. I mean, people say that we've not accomplished anything, but we've accomplished a lot. This city council, despite the rancor that you witnessed at city council, still gets a lot accomplished. So as mayor, I will lessen that rancor and I will develop a collaborative process where everyone has a chance to be listened and heard.
Thank you for your response. Mr. Wassberg, the same question for you. How will you rally the different groups in the community to get beyond the division of politics after the election is over so we can be united in moving forward for the benefit of all who are in Richmond? Mr. Wassberg, you have 1 minute to respond.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
I said, look, you have to have a government that's going to respect all constitutional rights. And we know for a fact that the city council has not did that. Sanctuary cities aid and abetted criminals from the federal government. You cannot have a government that's doing that. They're breaking the law and they know it. What I would do, I would get the community together, no matter white, brown, pink, yellow, green. We all have to live together. You all have the same constitutional rights. And when you go in that front of the city council, they're going to have to obey your constitutional rights. And we know for a fact that city council had did more for the Latino community than all the others. Stopping police checkpoints, giving fraudulent IDs to undocumented immigrants. He has no right being in my country. See, this is what's dividing our city. But like I said, we can all come together. You have all the rights like everybody else, as long as you're an American citizen. You have all the rights like everybody else under the Constitution.
You're at time, Mr. Wassberg.
Thank you.
Thank you for your response. So I want to thank all of the candidates for participating in the prepared question portion of our forum tonight. We're now going to move to, did I leave you out, Mr. Bates? I'm so sorry.
I understand.
I'm so sorry. Forgive me, Mr. Bates. Let's read the question for you.
Okay.
How will you rally the different groups in the community to get beyond the division of politics after the election is over so we can be united in moving forward for the benefit of all in Richmond? Father Time is catching me too.
That's a tremendous question. And I listened to some of my competitors. I'll tell you, it's not easy. There are some people that are adamant in their position. They will never change. There are others who are flexible. You got to be able to select, from my experience, those people that are amenable and will listen to other people in their positions. I've worked with Mr. Eduardo Martinez. I think he's that kind of a person. There are others on the RPA that I don't necessarily think. So Mr. Willis is another good person to work with. When you're bringing people together with diverse opinions and positions, you try to bring people that are reasonable and willing to listen to the other side and not come in with their own agenda. That's politics number one. So those are the things I would do, is collect those individuals that are willing to listen and work in a cooperative effort for the benefit of the city. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. So once again, I want to thank all of you for participating in the prepared question portion of the forum this evening. We're now going to move to the open roundtable session, of which I too will moderate. And we will probably end up with some very spirited debate, because there are some questions here that are of great concern to the citizens of Richmond. So I'm going to put a question out there. The first person to move on it, I'll give them the floor, and I'll give others the opportunity to chime in. But in order to maintain a little order here, put your hand up if you want to respond to it, and I'll call on you accordingly. So I'm going to put it out there, and the first person who moves on it, I'll start with them. And the question is this, because it's of great concern to many people, and it frustrates a lot of people, and it deals with homelessness. Why does Richmond have so much homelessness? How do you feel the city of Richmond has handled this situation? Anybody have a comment on that?
I believe that housing is a human right, and it's a human right that we aren't adequately providing to most of our vulnerable residents. First, we need to provide adequate support to our current unhoused residents. This includes trash abatement, security measures, access to restrooms and showers, and fire prevention training. That's why I'm proud to have diverted funds that were sitting uselessly year after year in our police budget to provide such services to our homeless community. Second, we need to provide permanent housing. At the Ryden Road encampment, I pushed for a full survey of every resident so that we could understand why people became unhoused and how the city and county could help them move away. And I will push for safe parking sites across the city. We have seen too much NIMBYism in Richmond. Unhoused families with children are in our backyards, and they deserve a place to be safe. And we will work with the county to find them stable housing. And many people are only a serious illness or job loss away from losing their housing. We need to make sure that people don't become homeless.
All right, I want to poke at this a little bit, Mr. Martinez, and I saw
Sure.
Mr. Bates, he had his hand up, so I'm gonna bring him in. But what I want to poke at on this, you're making some very valid points, but I guess the question would be, given that we see so much of it right now throughout the city, how do you think the city is doing with it, addressing the issue right now, today? How do you think the city's doing on this issue?
Well, we have been trying to find ways. Homelessness is a multifaceted issue. People aren't there for one reason. If people were there for only one reason, we could find one solution. But there's a multiple amount of reasons that people are there. People are there because they lost a job. People are there because they want to escape domestic violence. People are there because they have mental illness. People are there because they have substance abuse issues. So,
Okay.
So because of that, that's why I insisted on having a survey of the residents. And we hadn't been doing that to the extent that we needed. But we've done that at Ryden, and Ryden residents are beginning to leave that encampment.
Mr. Bates, I'm going to bring you in on this. You had your hand up.
Well, the policies of the city are dominated by the RPA. They have the 4 votes that dictate what does and does not go on in the city. As a result, homelessness tend to migrate to areas that are less police enforceable. You don't have the homeless in Hercules or Pinole. The homelessness came from Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco, and especially after Berkeley closed down a significant portion of their homeless, they gravitate to Richmond. And I was down at Riding Road today. And I'll tell you, it is as bad today as it was when it first started at its height. The same thing with Castro. There is no plan. They're on the freeways. And now they're gravitating on 4th Street in front of the churches. And eventually they're going to gravitate in people's property. Last point, Mr. Wright. RPA wanted to put the homeless at City Hall at our beautiful Civic Center until the residents outrageous. The same thing, they want to put them at Hilltop. You need a location that is acceptable by the total community for the homeless. You can't put them in areas where they are not wanted, and it's just going to create more and more problems. And most of these people, I guarantee you, are not from the city of Richmond. I ask simply, check the license plate, check the driver's license, check their social security, where they get their money from. Most of them are not from Richmond, and the RPA refused to acknowledge that. And the police got their hands cuffed. They can't do a thing.
Mr. Wassberg, you wanted to respond, and then Mr. Dunning.
Yes, you hear me?
We can hear you.
I said, look, majority of these people on Ryder Road in Castro don't want to go out and get a job. All they want to do is sit there and get drunk and do drugs. This is why the police were there every day. First of all, these people on Ryder Road is not a homeless campment. They're vehicles that parked there illegally for the last almost 2 years, and the Richmond PD didn't do nothing because the RPA, Eduardo Martinez, told the police not to enforce the law. As long as you give these people a freebie, they're going to go for it. Because believe me, people, I know. I think you read the article about me and in East County Times. Look, I've been living in my truck for 16 years. I know what it is. A person could help themselves if they want to, but these people don't want to. I see it every day here in El Sobrante. I see it on Riders Road and Castle. These people just too lazy to go out and work. And then they complain, well, oh, I got mental problems. I got mental issues. I'm an alcoholic. I've been kicked out of my house. A person could do what they want. If the person needs help, they could go out and get help, but they don't want to do it. And this is what the city council is doing. They are sponsoring these people to be homeless. They are sponsoring these homeless encampments. Matter of fact, they even passed a law that they cannot be evicted from Castro. And this is the problem. It's the city council that is supporting this stuff because they're not encouraging these people to go out and work. Because like I say, most of these people are just an excuse for them to, as long as they get a freebie from the city, they're going to do it. But these cameras should have been shut down the first time they even started. But this is what the RPA did not want the Richmond PD to do. They're there illegally. They have no right being there. Like I say, if we have to ship them out to other counties at the at all the other homes there on the what the hell excuse me, what do you call it now, the shelters? If we have to ship them out to other cities at the shelters, so be it. Ship them out to Contra, San Francisco, Oakland, and so forth. I mean, we're going to have to do something with these people. We just can't let these people just walk around and do drugs and alcohol and commit crime. This is what they're doing.
Let's give Mr. Dunning an opportunity to get in on this.
Right.
So one thing, I actually, is this where we can address each other, or is this where we can address each other?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Mark. You, of all of us, you're the one with the most lived experience. What would it take for you to get the support that you need?
Well, right now, look, I got my Social Security, disability. All right. I'm living at a place where I'm not being harassed. I applied for Section 8.
But are you living in your truck by choice?
Matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you what happened. In 2004, I ended up getting laid off from Chevron, right? So what I did was I hooked up with Andre Shoemake. I was helping because he was spearheading the violence. So I hooked up with him, helping on this TV show. So I got the idea to go out and film. So when I filmed my first homicide there on 4th and McDonald, I was hooked. And this is what I was gonna do, all right? And I spent all my money, all my savings. I stayed in my truck and I finished up the documentary. Then I went to Contra Costa College for 12 years. I was the longest student they
So
ever
Mark, it
had.
sounds like you've been working hard. You work, you do things, you're productive. So what would the answer be for you?
Well, right now I'm waiting for Section 8 to kick in.
Okay,
As soon
so
as,
you need that
soon as,
facilitated for you.
yeah, as soon as Section 8 kicks in, I already filled out an application for a couple of what was that place? Oh, I forget. I think it's down on the south side.
Well, can
But
I
like
just say, Mark, so I think, you know, as we work towards solutions for this, I would like to see Mark at the table. He's got more expertise than a lot of people around here, and I think he's got some good ideas to share. On Monday, I went out to San Antonio, Texas, and toured a place called Haven for Hope. Some of you have heard me talk about it. We don't have time to get into details here, but what I will say is it addresses everything that all of us have been talking about this evening. It addresses the complexity. It addresses everything from short-term emergency, I need shelter over my head tonight, to long-term transitional support, facilitation with Section 8 housing, etc. You can stay there as long as you need to, but their average stay is only 4 months, $26 per person per day. We have not been thinking long-term around here like that at all. All we're doing is working in the immediate realm of crisis response, you know, emergency, and we're not even doing well at that at all. So we need to do better at that, but we need to be thinking long-term, and we ought to learn from other programs and people like Mark and actually get together and actually develop policy and programs that make sense. We don't have that yet. And I would ask respectfully to Mr. Bates, if we don't have a plan yet, what's been going on for the last few years?
I'd like to make one comment. These people at Riders Road and Castro did not even bother to go up to that jobs fair that they had up there in Hilltop about a month ago. Not one person went up there to try to look for a job. Even the RPA, the city council, did not rent a van. So, okay, we'll take you up there. These people were hiring. This is what I'm trying to say. These people at these two home encampments, they don't want to work. A person could better their lives if they want to. First thing I knew I was going to be out on the street, the first thing I did, I went to the Contra Costa College and got me a Pell Grant for $800. And I was at Contra Costa College from sunup to sundown. That's how I got all my credits as a filmmaker, actor, and TV talk show host. I digged in garbage cans, dumpsters. I wore the same clothes for almost a week without even washing them.
Let me
And
take
I
this
know what it
opportunity.
is. Okay. All right.
You know that there seems to be a connection, homelessness and crime and the interaction with our local public safety officials. So let me move over to public safety for a second. I'm going to offer up a statement, a question, and add to that, and I want to get your responses to it. Police don't stop crime, they just solve crime or attempt to solve crime. Do you believe this statement? We are below the number of qualified police service in our city. How do you suggest we keep our residents safe? And along with that, there's been a lot of complaints about the 23rd Street corridor and others relative to prostitution and human trafficking. All of these type of issues that fall under public safety. And what are your thoughts on these? Are we doing an adequate job addressing these issues? What should we be doing? I'm going to go with, I'll get back to you on that, Mark. Okay, Shawn, go ahead.
So there is no one size fits all approach. No, police are not the answer to everything, not even close. But I think there is an important threshold between sufficient deterrence and complete lawlessness. And, you know, quick example, the other day, a couple weeks ago, my neighbor's catalytic converter was being stolen in broad daylight. They chased the guy off. He came back 10 minutes later, like mouse on cheese, to finish it off. Chased him off again. He came back again. Police were called, didn't make a difference. They kept coming. Finally, my neighbor actually finished the job and cut it the rest of the way off and put it in his garage. And this thief and 2 other vehicles were involved, kept coming back over 4 hours. They came 5 times. Now ask yourself, would any criminal do that in a scenario where they thought there were police at all? So we're not going to prevent all crime, no. And police are not the answer to everything, no. but we need a sufficient level, and we don't have a sufficient level right now. I could say more, but I'll keep it quick.
Anybody else on that?
I will respond to that. We still have money to hire policemen. It's not a matter of not having the funding to hire them. It's a matter of finding the policemen who want to do the job. So why can't we hire? Not because the city won't let them, but because there's a national shortage of people wanting to do police work.
Why did 2000 leave
Excuse
Richmond?
me, don't interrupt me. Thank you. Even the International Police Chiefs Association has concluded there are numerous factors contributing to the shortage, and we can't blame one factor for people not wanting a certain type of job anymore. As a council member, I supported us hiring a special firm to improve officer recruitment and retention. But we need crime prevention strategies that include other public safety workers. When I was a public school teacher, I was thrilled when my school added support staff. I wanted more help, and I wanted my students to thrive. Similarly, the police union should see our efforts to bring in other safety programs as a way to support their work so that they can do the sort of work that they were hired to do, as opposed to the other jobs, which they basically would rather not be doing.
All right,
Shawn.
Mr. Bates, I know you wanted to get in on this. Mr. Bates?
When you don't have a full awareness of what public safety is all about, you come up with all these different answers. Under the Magnus program, when we were at the height of our success, we had, as I indicated, 197 police officers. Prevention started with the ability of the police to be visible in the community, to stop and talk to people on the street, talk and speak with the young people, to be visible. That is crime prevention in itself. These individuals out there in the streets are just as smart or smarter than most of us. They know what the weaknesses are of the police department, and they take advantage of it. You saturate a community whereby police are visible and working and interchanging with the community, getting to know the community. A lot of crimes could be solved if individuals in the community would come forward and identify X, Y, Z. But if they don't have a trust with the police department, they don't have that interchange relationship, they tend to mind their own business. You need a strong police department that interact with the community. And that, since when Mr. Magnus was here, we have lost. And it's partly due to individuals on the re-imaging community that do not live in the city of Richmond, who had a hard up for the city of Richmond. Many of them was criminals. And that's why they defunded the police, and the majority of the RP went along with it. We need to restore our police department to its fullest capacity possible.
Okay, Mr. Wassberg, I'm gonna let you get your comment in, and I'm gonna move over to Mr. Dunning.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Before the pandemic, during the pandemic, there was not one word about defunding the police. Nothing. But after the Floyd incident, all Hades cut loose. All it was defund the police, vilify the police. The police are enemies. Even the president of the United States even admitted the police are the enemy. I said the police officers were being assassinated. It was being attacked. This is why they don't want to be cops. And Eduardo is 100% wrong. Go back and look at the news. Every Democratic city in the United States wanted to get rid of the police. They got some dumb idea that they're going to have a community policing, that they're going to implement all these programs like the task force. Well, we need to work with the community. We don't need the police. And matter of fact, the city council gave $6 million to the ONS, who does nothing. That money should have went to the Richmond PD. And it was Nat Bates and Eduardo and the mayor was sitting there bragging about taking money away from the Richmond PD and giving it to the ONS. It does do nothing. I was in on this stuff ever since the ONS was created. And they have the nerve to sit there and say, and they're going to be able to sponsor the police, Nat Bates and Eduardo Martinez? It's all just a bunch of nonsense. We all know what's happening in our nation. How can you have a government that you have the constitutional right to be safe? This is why our country was founded under law and order. But now you got the city council defunding the police. They're taking money away from the police. This is why people don't want to be police officers, because like the RPA, even the United States government, every Democratic city vilified the police. It's all on the news. We all know what was going on after the Floyd incident, all the rioting and all the hate attacking the police, Antifa, BLM, and these other anarchist groups. They even bragged about it. Even ever since this happened, the RPA was gung-ho and get rid of the police. They set up this stupid task force that is not going to do nothing. But the bottom line is you have the constitutional right to be protected by the police. Our country was founded under law and order.
All right,
And we
Mr.
know-
Wassberg.
Thank you.
Mr. Wright, I must ask for a second.
Rebut.
The $6 million of which Mr. Wassberg is speaking about did not come from the city. The $6 billion came from the state and was directed at the Office of Neighborhood Safety. That was not city budget funds. We get grants from all sorts of individuals, from the federal government, from the state government, even private enterprise. So please be aware, public, the $6 million was not city general fund money. It came from Assembly Person Buffy Wick and the governor's office. Thank
I
you.
talked to her.
And
I talked to her and she said it came from the.
I
Mr.
would like to
Wassberg,
correct
Mr.
that
Wassberg,
statement.
Mr. Martinez, I'm gonna
Okay.
hold you both because Mr. Dunning had his hand up and I said that
All
I'd
right.
give him an opportunity to respond.
Okay.
I'll get
all right.
Mr. Dunning and then I'll get you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Dunning.
And apologies, Eduardo, for the interruption earlier. I wasn't
No
sure
problem.
if we were supposed
Understood.
to or not. I actually am curious, Mr. Martinez, if you can explain, what's your explanation for why we're down 30 officers that could otherwise be funded? So, I mean, what's behind my question is that my belief is right now at where we are, it's not actually a question of money, it's a question of priorities. And the way the priorities were talked about last year was absolutely demoralizing to the police department. It's a non sequitur. It doesn't make sense to talk about the fact that there were unfilled positions when at the same time the message you were sending to the police department was, we don't need you, we don't want you, relatively speaking. So rather than commit to a sufficient level of seats, even if they're not filled, what happened is $3 million was taken away from the police department. I'm wondering, you're saying it's hard to recruit people, but do you not take responsibility for 24 officers actually leaving Richmond because of the way that went forth last year? Because you proclaimed that as a representative, you know that you should not defund the police, but you in fact did it anyway. Do you take any responsibility for that?
I like the way you framed the question. You really confused the issue. We had empty police positions long before.
The question is, why did 2,000
Excuse me,
officers
I'm
leave?
answering the question. I know what the question is. I'm intelligent enough to figure out what it is you're asking and what it is you're implying. So we had empty positions before we moved the money. We moved the money because the money wasn't being used and we wanted it to be used in a way to support the police. It's not a matter of taking money away so that police can't be hired. I mean, there's still money for 7 positions that need to be filled. So I think the person, or rather, I think it's the police union who needs to be more honest with Richmond residents, because they're the ones who have been pushing this culture of fear. And even our chief of police put out a report that said that crime was down. So
Why did 2,000 officers leave Richmond last year?
you'll have to ask them.
I did.
And what did they say?
Well, I was wondering if you knew. Do you not know?
I know propaganda when I hear it. So, you know, I pushed for a program where police can be recruited and police can be educated to become better policemen, because we need police accountability. And if we have qualified police and good leadership, we will have police coming to Richmond.
Agreed.
Mr. Wright, I'd like to ask the question.
Please.
During the discussion with Chief French on the agenda was an item that she requested that to bring her staff back in an appropriate level to try to deal with the criminal element and the crime, that the council would authorize 135 positions. This council collectively voted against that recommendation. Secondary, there's a statement that the crime is down, but no one is speaking about the unreported crime, of which, as Mr. Donegan had indicated, person comes out and tries to steal a Cadillac converter. Why report it to the police? There are so many crimes that are gone unreported. So you can't say the statistics represent a reduction in crime. And my last question, if you think crime is on a reduction, ask the citizens in the community. They will tell you that's a false statistic. Now,
All right,
I'd like to respond to that.
well, gentlemen,
because I think that if you have insurance, you're going to report a catalytic converter being taken from your car. It doesn't make sense that people wouldn't report that to the police.
But not to
It's essential for insurance purposes.
I
Well,
got one
gentlemen-
question if I may.
Gentlemen, we've reached the point in order to maintain timeliness for our program that I have to end this session, and it was getting very spirited. And I want to thank you all for participating, your input, your concern, and your sincerity with regard to your responses. But now, in order to maintain order and timeliness, I'm going to have to move to the closing statement portion of our program. And the first person who I'll bring forth for their 1-minute closing statement, clock is now on the screen, the timer screen, is Mr. Wassberg. You have 1 minute for your closing statement to sum it up. Mr. Wassberg.
You hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I said, we all heard from the candidates, right? All of them went beat around the bush. They didn't want to tell you the facts, what's really going on. The police are leaving because the RPA has defunded the police. That's a fact. That $6 million was diverted to the city budget because I talked to Buffy about it. Now look, I'll get things done, people. We know for a fact that the city government we have now is just a bunch of anarchists, democratic, social Bernie Sanders government. And I will not allow the city council to intervene, telling the police to not enforce the law. You have every constitutional right to be protected. And I'll do everything I can to protect your rights under the Constitution. This is what our government's for. And I have the power to, like I tried to say, I have the power to sign an executive order, implement some of these laws, to make sure the police is implementing these laws, to make sure the city council is not going to violate your constitutional rights.
All right,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wassberg, thank you for your closing statement. We will now hear from Mr. Martinez. You have 1 minute for your closing statement, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. Thank you for having this so that we can show our positions. And public safety is important to me. It will mean crime and violence prevention and really addressing the root causes of theft and gun violence. Traffic safety will mean engineered solutions and prevent reckless driving from happening in the first place. So I want to improve accessibility in building actually affordable housing and creating more green spaces. That's all infrastructure for our city needs, and it means jobs for that the residents want. So I invite you to look at my long record serving the city of Richmond. You know where I stand. My priorities have always been and will continue to be the people. That's why I'm the only mayoral candidate that doesn't take any money from corporations, real estate developers, or lobbying associates. I'm supported by the Democratic Party, Richmond firefighters, the Sierra Club, County Supervisor John Joya, and many others. So consider me November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you for your closing statement. We will now hear from Mr. Dunning. You have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Thank you, Jeff, for the moderation. This is definitely a more fun experience than some of the others. No offense, but you know, I see that each one of us here this evening brings valuable perspective, and I'm totally honest when I'm saying I would love to run a program that involved all of these voices at that table. We need every perspective involved if we're going to solve the problems. Now, we're not going to get there by saying, do it my way or do it your way. We're going to get there by co-creating, creatively creating new ideas that nobody's thought of before. And if we can do that, we can actually solve the problems. So if we just look back and say what's been done, what we've been doing is not working, then you got to ask yourself, why keep voting for the same thing? We got to do things differently. I'm running for mayor for the convening power to invite everyone to the table, and that includes you. So vote for me November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear a closing statement from Mr. Bates. You have 1 minute, Mr. Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Wright, and thank everyone for attending. I too appreciate my competitors. I think all of us have the city of Richmond dear at heart. We want the very best for this community. It would have been nice if Mr. Dunning had run for the city council and gotten some experience and knowledge, the same with Mr. Wassberg. But this race is about selecting someone that has the experience and proven experience to be able to move this city forward. We can talk, and the speeches that come out can be very nice, but can the person do the job? Have they done the job? And anytime you're looking for employment, people working in your company, the first thing you ask is a resume. What have you done? And my record of participation in this city is overwhelming. Twice your mayor, 4 decades on the council, contact with the DC and state for federal and state aid, being able to be a leader and get things done. That's my resume, and I appreciate a support in that regards.
Thank you for your statement, Mr. Bates. Well, I certainly want to thank all of our candidates for participating in our forum tonight. And I want to extend to you an extra thank you for maintaining professional decorum and adhering to our rules of engagement. So it was a pleasure being able to moderate this forum with you candidates. So let's give our candidates a virtual hand clap, some applause, and thank them for participating tonight.
And thank you,
At this
Mr. Wright,
time,
for always doing a great job.
you're so welcome, Mr. Bates. At this time, I would like to introduce the president of the West Contra Costa County League of Women Voters, Ms. Cheryl Collier, for closing remarks. So let us now receive the president of the West Contra Costa County League of Women Voters, Ms. Cheryl Collier. Ms. Collier.
Thank you. Good evening. I thought tonight's forum showed a great insight into the ideas and knowledge of each of the candidates. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. It was spirited and we gained knowledge. I also would like to thank our moderator, Jeff Wright. He did an excellent job. I'd like to thank KCRT, Richard Lee, and Brian Bland, the webinar operator. Also our sponsors, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, Inc., Epsilon Phi Zeta Chapter, and the Richmond NAACP. And of course, the League of Women Voters members, Linda Whitmore and Madeline Krayberg. Oh, I apologize on that name. I'm always challenged with it. But anyway, I deeply appreciate them. They do a tremendous job. And with that in mind, I appreciate tonight's coordinating forum that both of them did. Thank you again, Linda and Madeline. The voter's edge. I anticipated it was going to be flashed up on the screen. But anyway,
All right.
thank you. There's a voter's edge. The voter's edge is a twofold process. It's an opportunity for all candidates to submit their information about their beliefs and ideas that they want to implement. And also, it's there where voters can just go to this website and simply put in their zip code. And from the top of the ballot all the way to the down ballot, you can get information about people that are running in your area. So I encourage you to use this. And this organization was formed and developed, and volunteers come from the League of Women Voters, from the educational division of the state of California, League of Women Voters. So it's a awesome way to get information about the candidates. And I think you can visit tonight's forum on the KCRT channel 28 and the League of Women Voters website and our Facebook page. So for people who could not come in at the very beginning, or they feel like they need to share this information with others, family members and all, this is where you can direct them, where they can go and see this in the full entirety. And with that in mind, I'd like to say good night and cast your vote on November 8th. Thank you again.